All right, we are back on the live. All right, do we have anyone tuned in so far? If so, how are you doing today? Go ahead and let me know. Trying to get the link cross-posted to all of my social media accounts. And we can get started with today's discussion. All right, we are at 517 subs as of the start of this stream. Thank you all for getting me to 500 in the last stream. Props goes out to all of you. We're also at 25,904 Facebook followers, so good chance that we hit that 26K mile marker tonight. Huge things coming up for sure. All right, we have 3 people in the room with us. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Anthony here with Puget Sound Stormwatch again, live streaming. We're talking all things weather and Q&A. As usual, we start out with windy.com here. Just peeking for any excitement this breezy afternoon. Well, the excitement is coming up in a couple of days. So I know a lot of people probably thought that frontal passage was subpar, which it was. You know, forecast models did an extremely poor job of showing very little precipitation around the area. A lot of them showed us getting at least 1/10 of an inch with that, but that just simply did not happen. Like, a lot of people couldn't even tell that the front actually went over them earlier. It's one of those not too commonly seen transient style fronts. So it's here and it's gone like that. And just because of the decaying nature of this, it was hardly noticeable. Winds definitely kicked up in some areas, but once again, poor model guidance for a quick little transient front like this. So moved over the Seattle-Tacoma area at around 1:30 to 2. And actually, I didn't even notice that it was raining outside. Even then, it was just a shower, so much that it didn't even get picked up on my rain gauge down the street. Now at the moment, it's just some isolated showers coming on the coast, but the front has already made the beeline out to the eastern part of the state. And around most of the Tacoma to Everett area, it's partly cloudy with some sun breaks. Mostly clear over Seattle right now, but certainly some partly cloudy conditions filling in the south end as well as the north end. And some showers here and there. We actually have a lightning strike up here in the foothills. I didn't even notice this. That's within the last 15 minutes. We had a lightning strike up here east of, I believe this is east of Mount Baker. Oh yeah, this is well east of Mount Baker. Up here in the North Cascades, lightning strike with this little pop-up shower here. Impressive. Yeah. One other thing the models did a poor job showing was just how much instability there was ahead of this front. Or behind the front, I should say. Really just showed it being mostly stable because as we zoom out, you can already see the weekend system plowing towards us. Let's see, the low pressure center is somewhere in here. Then the occluded front, the cold front elongates all the way out here, and then here is our jet stream. This is going to bring the atmospheric river directly into our area Friday afternoon. But we should start to see things destabilize a bit starting tomorrow morning. Late tomorrow morning, early tomorrow afternoon. But the majority of the event will be during Friday afternoon. You notice how the leading edge of this atmospheric river is already just about 100 miles off the coast. Let me see if it shows up on radar scope, the lightning strike. Not that I can see, but it definitely showed up on Windy, so it is something. Just to the west of Ross Lake, up here off of Highway 20 in North Cascades National Park, there was a lightning strike in the last 15 minutes. For anyone just tuning in, I'm just looking into that lightning strike. See if I can narrow down an exact time for when it struck. It looks like sometime around 4:56 we got a lightning strike to the northeast of the Baker River and west of Ross Lake. Alright, well I guess let's go take a look at some model guidance, see if we can get an idea of what's to come for the area. So here I have the 18Z NAM3KM model. So it's the 11 a.m. run. The 5 p.m. run should start running in the next 2 hours or so. Let's see, it shows this transient frontal feature today. Although the NAM overdid the shower coverage. You know, it showed some heavier rain here along I-90 east of Seattle. That did not verify. And then some of those prefrontal showers start coming in around 6 p.m. tomorrow night, according to this model. And then things start to fill in pretty quickly from that point on as we go into the morning hours on Friday. And then notice it's pretty quick moving. So more so like a frontal feature with some extra moisture embedded. And perhaps small chance of some post-frontal thunderstorms. The SPC has actually highlighted part of the coast and Olympic Peninsula in a day 3 general thunderstorm risk, meaning that there's a small chance of seeing a thunderstorm within 25 miles of a point. That can be seen here. So the entirety of the Olympic Peninsula and the entirety of the Washington coast, the Strait of Juan de Fuca, parts of the Strait of Georgia, west of Bellingham, all in a day 3 general thunderstorm risk. So within 25 miles of this line, this includes parts of Seattle, Tacoma, Olympia, Everett, and Bellingham. So a very slim chance, but the chance is there for a quick thunderstorm pop-up, perhaps. But yeah, on this model, as soon as it's here, it's gone. But we may get just enough heavy rain to possibly end the drought, or I should say the 1 inch in 1 day drought for Seattle, which I believe is around 2 years or so now. It was back in 2023, the last time we saw greater than an inch of rainfall in a day for Seattle. That is certainly in jeopardy this weekend, but can't make any guarantees. Although the most recent NAM says, not so fast there, mister. That's not going to be the case. See, it only shows a half inch for Seattle and 1/4 of an inch for Tacoma. Very low end atmospheric river, just because of how quick it's going to be moving through the area. We can see just how quick it's moving if we go to the European and check the precipitable water anomalies. Let's see, the tail end of the atmospheric river starts north of Vancouver Island, and it slides down Vancouver Island onto our coast, and within 24 hours, it's already out of here. And perhaps it's still picking up the chance of that weekend weather system right behind this atmospheric river that could bring some wind to this area. Although it's been pulling it farther and farther north and having it much weaker than previously forecast. And if you guys were following along on my Patreon or my subscriber page on Facebook, you'd know that it's been quite a wild ride in the weather models and the extended. Yeah, so from this point, about 2 a.m. on Friday, like within 12 hours, the atmospheric river's out of here. We're definitely lucky this is progressive in nature and not more so static, because then we'd bring the chance of flooding around the area. But the progressive nature should keep a lot of the flooding potential down. Go to the European and check 24-hour rain totals. It certainly has some areas getting near or over an inch of rain in 24 hours. So if we start out here, this is going to be from today at 11 a.m. to tomorrow at 11 a.m. So then we offset that by 24 hours for every hour we go farther in the forecast. So for example, if we go 36 hours out, that's 12 hours from the time of the model run, and then 24 hours out from that. Oh, for example, this time slot shown here for the Tacoma area has Tacoma getting right around an inch. Seattle only getting a little over a half inch in this time period. So this is hour 66, 5 a.m. on Saturday. This is saying between 5 a.m. on Friday and 5 a.m. on Saturday, this is how much precipitation could accumulate around the area. And this would be the peak time of the atmospheric river moving through. So once again, it's saying between 5 a.m. on Friday, 5 a.m. Saturday, showing around an inch for Tacoma, just a hair over an inch for Olympia, about 6/10 of an inch for Seattle, around 3/4 of an inch for Everett, a bit over 1.1 inches for the Mount Vernon Burlington area, and around 0.85 inches for Bellingham. So it's showing a bit of a rain shadow here across most of the central Puget Sound. Now to zoom into a tighter window, we can switch this to 6-hour amounts. So we can get it 4 times as frequent. Like 4 times as frequent updates compared to the 24-hour run. It's showing some pretty impressive amounts here for the South Sound. It's showing about a ½ an inch for Tacoma from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Friday. And that one moves out, and then the next weather maker comes in, brings another front through, and we'll be watching the position of the low pressure center as we get closer in time, because that's going to be crucial for wind speeds and gusts this weekend. Doesn't show anywhere near as much rain falling across the area. Rain's mainly going to be the main threat with this front coming in on Friday. But Saturday is certainly going to be the wind. Let's switch it over to 6-hour max wind gusts on the European. This is today. So far, if we go back and look at the hazards viewer, so these are 24-hour rainfall amounts, and as you can tell, big time bust for a lot of the central Puget Sound. And we certainly got some more up here in the Bellingham area, a little over a 1/10 of an inch across most of the area. Even 0.3 here on the southern side of Mount Baker. But other areas, just a few hundredths of an inch at most. And a lot of areas did not get any measurable precip with that frontal passage. But we take a look at current wind gusts. Howling out there at Camp Muir here in Mount Rainier National Park. And then since midnight, they hit 84 miles per hour, more than hurricane force winds here on the south side of Mount Rainier National Park. 66 miles per hour here at Chinook Pass, 52 miles per hour at Crystal Mountain, 37 at Sunrise. So far, only 30 miles per hour here at SeaTac, and 26 miles per hour at Boeing Field, 38 at Payne Field. And not picking up any wind gusts yet for the Oak Harbor area, or any of Whidbey Island, as a matter of fact. And look at that as well, 66 miles per hour on the northeast side of Mount Baker. Most recent one was 58. But overall, pretty calm around the area. It's been a little blustery outside, but nothing too concerning. But today, of course, wasn't the huge wind event. And then again, we're not expecting a huge wind event anymore this weekend. Definitely breezy, blustery, but looking more run-of-the-mill again in most recent model runs. Yeah, I'm on the most recent 18Z European. Now let me zoom in just a tad here to the state level. You can start to see some of these details a little more clear. So these are in 6-hour intervals. So this is showing 6-hour max wind gusts at 10 meters or 33 feet above sea level. So it does show a lot of the Salish Sea region, including the San Juan Islands, Bellingham area, Fidalgo Island, and Whidbey Island. And parts of the Discovery and Squim Bay area also getting into this 45 to 50 mile per hour range. And a lot of the coast here also getting over 50 miles per hour. So this would be between 11 p.m. tomorrow and 5 a.m. Friday. A good possibility for some strong overnight gusts the farther north you go. And then elsewhere, blustery, but not damaging. At least until we get to Saturday when that next weather system comes in. Then it starts to bring some of the larger end wind gusts in. At least compared to recent model runs. You know, it's not the ridiculous runs I was seeing like 5 days ago, where it was bringing 60 to 70 mile per hour gusts here, which would be in competition with the Hanukkah Eve storm. You know, luckily it's not showing those solutions anymore. But it is still showing areas perhaps getting close to 50 miles per hour here during the nighttime on Saturday as that weather system makes a close approach. So we'll have to keep our eyes peeled for Saturday night. Looks like it's going to be a busy weekend weather-wise around here, for sure. Yeah, so strong winds up north here. Just as a little recap, strong winds up north here expected as we go into the morning time on Friday. But blustery elsewhere, a brief break, and then the next weather system comes in immediately behind this atmospheric river, and it brings areas of stronger winds to parts of the Puget Sound. So if I were to select a point out here in Tacoma, it's showing 44 miles per hour near Point Defiance, if this were to verify. 46 miles per hour here in Olympia and Tumwater. 37 miles per hour in the Seattle area. 43 up here in Everett. 39 miles per hour in Bellingham. This will all be between 11 a.m. and 5 p.m. on Monday. And it may even pick up a little bit more as we go into the evening hours on Saturday. So he's showing 45 miles per hour here for Tacoma. 35 for the Seattle area. At least for the immediate downtown area. As we go farther east, the winds definitely increase sharply over Lake Washington. So he has 47 miles per hour here for some of the Seattle metro. And then 40 to 45 for a lot of the Tacoma metro area. But not as much for the I-5 corridor during this time. Strongest threat of wind gusts is going to be a little bit earlier in the day, the farther south you go. So just something we'll have to keep our eyes on for sure, because there's still a lot of time for this to evolve and change. It's just going to be making comparisons between each and every model run. So the 18Z European wants to bring this relatively modest size low into northern Vancouver Island, which would cast a little bit of a pressure gradient over here. So this is the best time slot for us to get our 45 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts. So when these isobars are tight like this over our area, this is the pressure gradient being casted. So here's Friday's front and atmospheric river, and then the low pressure system and associated front on Saturday. And a little bit of a break in the weather for a bit, but you know, as we go back to the 12Z, just take a look at how many weather systems we can expect going into the first week of November. There's 2 weather systems this weekend. And then another front comes through the morning of the 29th. And then another potentially strong front coming through on the 1st. Then maybe a little area of low pressure making a close approach. Luckily, this is weak in nature. This is all the way out on November 3rd, though. Oh, and then another front after that. If I go back and count this again, it has 7 weather systems over the next 15 days on this European run. Full action storm train mode. Compare this to the GFS, the American model. American model wants to bring the low pressure center a bit farther south, which could result in stronger winds for some areas. It doesn't look like the pressure gradient is going to be as tight, though. But it looks like the GFS has 6 weather systems coming through. Yeah, luckily the GFS shows this low pressure center filling in quite a bit as it moves in, which would spare us damaging winds. Although this is a lower resolution model, so we'll really have to wait till we get into a high res model range. You know, as we get closer in time to this is still a couple days out. So probably have to wait until tomorrow afternoon to get a really good look at what the estimated wind gusts are around this area. So far, we're still a little bit of a ways out on the high-res models. The GFS at least shows a brief period of 30 to 40 mile per hour wind gusts across much of the interior Puget Sound. And then when the front comes through, which is expected to come through on the 29th, another little breezy wind event, nothing damaging right now on the models. And then this could be another potential atmospheric river occurring Halloween night and the morning of November 1st. It does show another brief period of 40 plus mile per hour gusts up north as we go into 2 p.m. Halloween Eve. And then lots of areas of 25 to 30 mile per hour wind gusts across the Puget Sound as the sun starts to set Halloween Eve. The European brings most of this in on the 1st and not Halloween Eve, so still some disagreement on the timing there, which is completely normal. You know, it's to be expected. We're still several days out. So it's really just comparing each and every model run and seeing if we have any trends that we can follow. I'm going to switch it over to the European AI forecasting system. So Friday's front coming through. And then Saturday's weather system, it has it a bit weaker and a little farther north, which would spare us, again, those strong winds. But then you notice here, as we go out to the 29th, it shows a much more potent weather system off the coast. It could bring a strong cold front through along with it. However, the strongest area damaging winds will likely stay to our north and west during that time. And then you can see a little bit here, it brings the cold front through the morning of Halloween. And then it looks to bring another atmospheric river north of Vancouver Island for some time. And then perhaps another front out in the November 4th and 5th range, possible as well. But I personally think of the AI forecast system as still in its experimental stage, so I don't always take it seriously. I really just see how it follows trends on the normal European and see, you know, compare and contrast what it's showing to the normal models. I don't use it for any serious forecasting right now, just my personal opinion. And then this is the Canadian, which was showing some pretty crazy solutions just a few days ago. Like it was showing this storm coming through, but absolutely monstrous, like hurricane size. So the Canadian wants to bring this system a bit farther south, weaker, but a bit farther south, and then up through the southern portion of the area, which would likely bring the strongest winds across the gorge. So most of the strongest winds would likely stay south of this area. And then see, he wants to develop another little transient low pressure system and small little cold front along with it on Sunday, but that will stay well south of the area, so it poses no threat. But you notice as well, the Canadians kind of trying to agree with the European AI forecast system here. So it has a relatively deep and strong wind field on this low pressure system, but it brings it up north into Vancouver Island as well. You notice here it does kick up the winds quite a bit here in the Sound, so could see a nice little cold front feature coming through on the 29th. And then there's our cold front expected Halloween Eve into November 1st. Go switch it over to gusts and see what it has to show for that. So this would be Friday at 5 a.m. It's again showing 40 to 50 mile per hour gusts here for the open waters of San Juan Island, Skagit, and and Whatcom counties, excuse me. So Whatcom, Skagit, Island, and San Juan counties. And then not as strong for wind gusts around the area on Saturday. It's a little more conservative there. Then you notice it does bring the stronger winds to the Portland area and most of northwestern Oregon, so it keeps a lot of the wind south of the Olympia area. As we go forward in time, it does kick up the winds quite a bit into the 30-mile-per-hour range on Sunday morning, but relatively short-lived. Then this is probably another one we'll have to watch because this has been showing up in the more recent solutions, although it hasn't been raising any red flags quite yet because of model disagreement. But since the solution does show up in at least one model run, you know, it sort of raises the, you know, the I had an analogy here, but you know, I lost it. But anyways, that's not the point. All I'm saying is we'll have to watch out for the 1029 to 1030 range as well, for the possibility of another close approaching deep low pressure system that could bring some wind around the area. Okay, this has parts of the Puget Sound getting up into the 45-mile-per-hour gust range if this were to verify. Then the night of Halloween, it's showing wind gusts in the 30-mile-per-hour range as well. So it could be a tough night to trick or treat out there this year. All right, go take a look at some analytics. Thank you all for liking the stream. 6 current likes at the moment, 8 viewers, and 65 total views. For anyone just tuning in, hello and good afternoon. This is Anthony with Puget Sound Stormwatch. Thank you to the additional subscribers as well. Currently at 519 and counting. Right now, we're just taking a look at some model runs for the near future, going out to the first week of November, and just making some comparisons and contrasting everything. See if we can nail down any potential solutions for windstorms in the future. Right now, it's definitely looking like some low-end potential here and there, but mainly just blustery at the moment. Nothing that really sticks out as a red flag windstorm. At least not yet. Yeah, so the GFS shows this storm as well, but it pulls it way north. You know, similar strength. The timing is there, but the location is sparse across these model runs. So we may be able to narrow down a possible track for this potential storm in the near future as we get closer to the time of the event. This would be Wednesday afternoon, as in next Wednesday, a week from now. All right, we have Rory Sinden in the chat. Welcome in. Pilot on Vancouver Island wanted to say that your posts are the basis of my long-range weather forecasting. Appreciate the work you do. Thank you for your support. You have a background in meteorology. Education-wise, very slight. So I only took 4 quarters of prerequisites for the atmospheric sciences degree, which is the one that you need to become a meteorologist, but no more than that. So a lot of my background is self-taught. Sorry, I'm just getting a lot of the Facebook notifications here. I think we're 91 followers from 26K on Facebook. So it looks like we'll probably hit that tonight. Unless things really start to slow down tonight, it looks like 26K will be in the grasp. But yeah, to answer your question, honestly, I do not have an education background in meteorology. I teach myself everything, and I've been teaching myself since I was a little kid. So I've really been honing in on the weather for almost 20 years. Thank you again for your inquiry, by the way. Yeah, so the European AI forecast system seems to be, at least the 12Z was pretty close with what the GFS was saying for the system, but the 18Z, so he has pulled it a little bit east and much weaker. So the trend was there at one point, and if we go back to the same time and go through previous model runs, you'll see how the forecast bounces around dramatically. And it looks like we got another YouTube sub, so we were at 520. Thank you all so much for tuning in and subscribing. It means a lot, truly. It's a cool field with a lot of depth, as you know. Always appreciate people who take an interest in it. Right there with you on that. I'm convinced that we have a pretty solid weather community here around the Pacific Northwest. Something I'm really grateful for. You know, I don't run into any disagreements with the other weather people or butt heads a lot. You know, a lot of them are really understanding, and I'm grateful for that. And then take a look at some ensembles too, because the ensembles were showing some pretty interesting solutions here and there. So this is an average of 50 different members. And even the averages are showing wind gusts kicking up pretty high here across much of western Washington with this passing weather system here on Saturday afternoon. See, for the Tacoma area, it shows around 43 miles per hour. Once again, these are averages. For the Seattle area, about 40 miles per hour. And off the coast, 50 mile per hour range as well. Luckily for a short time. Because these are 6-hour averages, so it really shows peak winds being within a 6-hour window. It doesn't show it more than that, which is good news. You know, for our Friday system and atmospheric river, it really shows averages in the 25 to 35 mile per hour range for most of the area, but quite a bit higher the farther north and west you go, over the open waters of the Salish Sea out here. So 40 to 45 mile per hour wind gusts possible up there Friday with the passage of the cold front and associated atmospheric river. So this is what the averages are showing on the European ensemble run. So 50 different members all shown here, and then it has an average here. So the average shows a 989 millibar low being west of Cape Flattery. This is at 11 a.m. on Saturday. You notice how it does bounce around these members quite a bit. So these numbers indicate the last 2 digits of the mean sea level pressure. So in this case, if we had an 89, it would show this 989 right here. So this 989 here is the same as this 89 way up here. So like this would be 986, 988, 986 all the way out here, 992, 993. Still a little bit of spread, but the overall consensus is that it's going to keep the center of low pressure off the coast. All right, Green-Eyed Breeze, hello, welcome. A lot of our foliage is still in the trees. Do you believe the wind on Saturday will be damaging? For some areas, the way it's looking, I'd say yes. So the farther north you are, especially Whidbey Island area, if you're exposed to these westerly winds coming down the strait, there's certainly going to be some tree and power damage to areas up north. With the last system that came through very recently, I did hear some power outages western Snohomish County, and a lot of Island County as well had some scattered power outages. You know, I even heard some power outages down here in the southwest interior. So yes, it does help that there's still a lot of leaves on the trees. but it also helps that we're going to be getting a lot of this water at once. So the ground's going to be soaked, which will allow those roots to move around quite easier. So don't be surprised if you get even a little 35-mile-per-hour gust. With the leaves on the trees, you can still uproot trees very easily with wind gusts of that magnitude. Pinpointing exactly where any damage or power outages are going to be is a whole different story. And a couple of these members as we go forward in time too. This is at 5 p.m. on Sunday. It does have some relatively bold numbers out here just off the coast. Like a 987 millibar low right off the coast here would certainly bring some stronger winds farther south as well. But most of the ensemble guidance wants to keep it over Vancouver Island, which would, for the most part, spare a lot of our area from any borderline damaging wind gusts this weekend. We can go back in time as well to previous models. And you notice how it has some pretty crazy numbers right here off the coast too. But overall, the ensemble guidance still keeps it in a relatively isolated area off the central Vancouver Island coast. If we go several days back, it was showing some absolutely insane numbers out here in a much different spot. It would have, look, a 948 millibar low. Even if it's that far off, the cold front associated with it would certainly cause some damaging winds out here. But this is several days back. Like, just for hypothetical purposes, so not to be taken seriously. The AIFS, extremely similar solution in the most recent run. It keeps it in almost the exact same area this weekend. Takes nearly the same track, has a little bit deeper off the coast here. But even the closest ensemble member is still 100 miles off the coast. And overall, pretty modest agreement with the position and timing of that low on the AI forecast system. Seems like quite a bit more of a spread on the GEFS ensemble, which is the American ensemble members. So it has a 997 average off the coast of Cape Flattery. So not as deep of a low pressure center, but closer. Then we look at average wind gusts during this time. Doesn't have very much. Take into account this is a lower resolution model, so it's not always going to verify perfectly. It's just to show you a baseline of what could happen under these ideal conditions. And see, this GFS ensemble run really shows that there's not much to worry about. But this is just one ensemble run. So it can't be used as an exact forecast. Once again, just a very low-end baseline. So that's why we compare it to different model runs and different model types. You can go back through all of these different model runs. You can't see it on your screen, but I can see it on mine. But there's a drop-down menu here that shows model runs going out to 12 different runs back. So 3 days previously. Nice to follow along as the models change with time. And it's a given that they're going to change with time. That's just the way it is and the way it always will be. So these are the Canadian ensembles. So it's quite a bit more spread, nowhere near as much precision on this one. So for now, at least we can count this as an outlier at this moment. So we go back in time here. You know, it was showing some pretty insane solutions coming through. But luckily, that's not the case anymore. So the concerns for a huge damaging windstorm are much lower than they were several days back. Go check out, see if we can see what the pressure shows on the most recent cams in range. So I have the NAM3 cam. Let me switch it over to the 18Z real quick and look at MSLP, sea level pressure. So here's our front and atmospheric river coming through, and then the next area of low pressure has it at around 996 millibars and staying well off the coast, pulling off to the north and east into northern Vancouver Island, sparing us a strong damaging wind event this weekend. That is what the 18Z NAM3 cam is showing. See, keep an eye on that low pressure center, and it pulls well north and west of the area. But the associated cold front along with it could bring some relatively strong gusts to the area. So let me zoom in a bit and show you guys in closer detail. Thank you to the other 2 people who just subbed. We're at 522 now. So this is what it's showing in the morning time on Friday as that front makes a close approach. So here's the front as seen here, the sharp little cutoff in the winds. It does have winds kicking up quite a bit, especially farther north and west of Seattle here over the open waters. It has the winds really picking up there starting as early as tomorrow night, later tomorrow night. So it already has wind gusts in the 45 mile per hour range west of Whidbey Island at midnight on Friday. For much of the SeaTac metro area, 25 to 30 mile per hour wind gusts. These would likely be coming out of the south. And then gradually picking up to the 40 mile per hour range as we go into Friday afternoon. And we're not quite in range of Saturday quite yet. We'll have to start waiting for the next couple of model runs for the NAM3 cam. So it probably won't be till tomorrow afternoon where we see the full extent of this event in high resolution model range. But we can see the entirety of Friday right now. You see it does show it cooling off rather quickly as the sun starts to set on Friday. So luckily it shouldn't be too long for peak wind gusts around this area. But it does show some stronger wind gusts up here in Bellingham, Anacortes, Oak Harbor, the San Juan Islands, Port Townsend area as well. And especially off the Long Beach coast. 50 to 55 mile per hour wind gusts possible for a few hours off the coast Friday afternoon. These will probably be peak winds around the area late Friday morning, early Friday afternoon. So around 40 miles per hour for the Tacoma area, 35 to 40 for Seattle, and perhaps less for inland Everett, but a little more over the open water. That's the conclusion I can currently draw from this model run here. Of course, it's still far from a finalized forecast. So just another little quick disclaimer on that. And then do be advised as well, after this front and atmospheric river starts to move out of here, there's a slight chance of some post-frontal thunderstorms forming along the coast as well for a short time. See, this is what it shows for 3 p.m. on Friday. Maybe some little isolated cells and thunder makers moving on shore. It doesn't look like they make it very far, because it does look like that the atmosphere begins to stabilize pretty quickly behind this front after it moves out for the Puget Sound area. So it may just be something as simple as some passing light showers during the afternoon time on Friday. But of course, notice how progressive this atmospheric river is. The moisture doesn't stay for long. It looks more like a disorganized frontal system coming through, which normally only lasts for a few hours at a time. You know, the winds, of course, are going to last longer, but we're just looking at precipitation amounts here. And this is what we're looking at for total precipitation according to the 18Z NAM3KM high-res model here. Only showing around a ½ inch for Seattle, 0.4 of an inch for Everett and Tacoma and points north, and a much larger established rain shadow over the Salish Sea. But it does show a nice bout of snow for the higher elevations once the cold front moves through. So the snow levels behind the cold front are going to drop down to pass level once again pretty easily, and possibly even below pass level for a lot of these areas. But for the coast and surrounding points, it is going to fall as rain. It has a majority of this rain falling during the afternoon hours Friday. Over just a few hour period. Now, if this were a slow moving system, hypothetically, then we could easily see double these rainfall amounts. We could be pushing an inch in 12 to 18 hours for Seattle if it were moving twice as slow, but it's not. So this heavily mitigates the risk of flooding for a lot of this area. And I believe, you know, I showed a graphic on Facebook as well that there was another possible flash flood outlook posted by the Weather Prediction Center in Maryland. I believe they let that product expire again due to recent model runs trending away from a high-impact atmospheric river event. And just a heads up as well, there's also a high surf advisory for the Washington coast as well. So 20 to 22 foot waves possible along the Pacific coast Thursday evening and the Friday morning. This is ahead of the atmospheric river and also well ahead of that low pressure system making a close approach on Saturday. So we could see this high surf advisory extended if the track of that low pressure center changes. And then as a little refresher, here's the thunderstorm outlook for Friday. Includes most of the Olympic Peninsula and Washington coast, and points 25 miles to the right of this line are also included. So parts of the Seattle metro area have a slight chance of seeing a thunderstorm Friday afternoon. It's a low chance, but it is there. And still not seeing much for wind today. So it's a good thing I didn't go too in depth on the wind threat this afternoon. Thankfully, it has not verified anywhere close to what the models were showing so far, which is a good sign. You notice it still shows it gusting to 63 out here at Camp Muir and Mount Rainier National Park. But elsewhere, pretty much calm around the area. So you got some higher clouds passing through the Seattle area at the moment and some showers over the open waters and Vancouver Island, but elsewhere, mainly partly cloudy with sun breaks. But you can already see the prefrontal clouds starting to make landfall here in the next few hours. And this is our atmospheric river. this is our atmospheric river out here. So here's the approximate center of low pressure, and then the occluded front splitting out to a warm front and a cold front. And the atmospheric river moisture is going to be ahead of the cold front. So this would be the approximate track of the cold front right here, and this is going to move in the next 24 hours. And we also did have a lightning strike out here near Mount Baker earlier. This was right as I started my stream. You saw that lightning strike out here near Mount Baker. Since then, it does not appear we've had any more lightning in the area. You know, the chance of seeing a thunderstorm out here is extremely low today. Not impossible as we saw, but still extremely low. All right, we're up to 11 likes. Thank you all so much. If you guys enjoy what you're seeing so far, please feel free to share the stream and the channel with your friends. Let's see, we stand at 522 subscribers, already up 5 since the stream started. And 25,911 followers on Facebook, so we're only 89 away from 26K already. And just got +1, so now we're only 88 away. It's like there's a good chance we'll hit that tonight. As a little refresher, these are 24-hour rainfall amounts around the area. Most of the rain fell north of Skagit County. A lot of areas did not record a drop, including my area. They were just starting to get the 48-hour HER run to render. So once this is fully rendered, it'll go out to 48 hours and should cover the morning of Friday. See what the radar coverage should be. Every other model run goes out to 18 hours, so nowhere near the range that I need quite yet. The last 48-hour run, the 18Z, goes out to this far, so it does show the atmospheric river moisture moving in. And see the frontal boundary right there. So it only shows out to 11 a.m. on Friday so far on this run. Once the next run finishes, it'll go out to 5 p.m. on Friday. It does show a little potential for some lightning flashes. It's even showing very slight potential for lightning flashes across the area tomorrow afternoon with some passing showers ahead of the front. Although the chance is extremely low at this moment. Still not close enough in time to get a pressure rating out here yet. One other model I can use too is the Rapid Refresh Forecast System Experimental. This is the one that's set to take over for the NAM3KM in commission next year. Because it does look like the NAM3KM is going to be decommissioned in favor for this model sometime next year. But this one, every other model run, so it goes on 3-hour intervals, but the ones with multiples of 6, so 0, 6, 12, and 18 go out to 84 hours instead of 60. However, I don't see this model as fully reliable quite yet. Still got a little bit of time before they deem it non-experimental. You do notice it's got a pretty enticing image here for wind gusts this Saturday. You know, it brings a locally stronger area of wind gusts into our area compared to what a lot of models are showing. And it even has a couple different areas of spin within the main complex as well. Could turn out to be an interesting forecast if this does actually verify, because it does cast a very short-lived tight gradient over parts of the South Sound, which could boost the wind gusts a little more. It's showing some pretty impressive rainfall amounts for totals. This is a combination of Friday and Saturday. Once again, experimental, so take this with a grain of salt. But it does show an inch for Seattle here in about 12 hours. And then another wave of moisture coming in from that center of low pressure. So see, this is why I say not to take this seriously quite yet. Because this is what it was trying to show earlier when that front came on shore. Some thunderstorms along with it. This was not the case, nowhere remotely close. And it shows some areas of stronger showers behind that front and atmospheric river as well. You know, right now I'm going to say don't count on it. And then textbook low pressure center spin over the area. But this is once again, you know, just kind of a experimental forecast, not to be taken seriously, just to be used as a baseline for comparison to the other models. You know, and then I'll go through it at the end of the event and see which model did the best job at portraying the event. Which most of the time, it's the NAM3KM. Any damaging weather for us the weekend? Sorry, I just got into the stream. Luckily, you didn't miss very much. So I'm going over the weather models right now with everybody. And it doesn't show much for damaging winds, if anything at all, around the area. So this would be for tonight. And actually this... No, never mind. This was earlier, and this did not verify. So I have observations here on this site. This is weather.gov/WRH/hazards. It shows current wind gusts, and I can also go back and change it to max wind gusts since midnight. See, a couple 30s here and there, and just shy of 40 miles per hour here at Payne Field. So it did okay, but it severely overestimated the South Sound, which had basically no wind this morning and afternoon. You know, it's been relatively calm outside my window here in Milton. And it does show things picking up quite a bit, possibly some wind gusts in the 35 to 40 mile per hour range on Friday morning. But it doesn't go out to Saturday yet. So we don't have the high-res model guidance for Saturday quite yet. Saturday could yield some stronger wind gusts around this area, depending on how strong the weather system is and where it moves. You know, it's going to be detrimental to the wind forecast around here. Just because of how inconsistent everything's been. It's still going to take a little bit, but in the next hour or two, the 0Z NAM 3KM should begin to render. Then we'll go, you know, a little bit farther in time here. This goes out to 11 p.m. on Friday. Then we can start to see out to 5 a.m. on Saturday. It's still not going to be till late morning time, early afternoon time tomorrow when the model runs all get within range for these cam models here. So let's see what the high-res Canadian says, the 2.5 kilometer Canadian model. So this one currently only goes out to 48 hours, so it doesn't cover much of the event on Friday. But it still shows a similar story up here. Some stronger wind gusts up north and west of Seattle earlier on in the day on Friday. Possibly more than 45 miles per hour or higher for parts of Whidbey Island. So yeah, all of the cam models are showing a very similar story so far for wind timing and strength. Mainly 30 plus for most of the inland Puget Sound and 40 plus north of Port Townsend. So models are agreeing on that timing and strength wise, which is good. You know, you want this much agreement, even if it's 2 days out where there should be agreement already. Sometimes there's not that much agreement. The disagreement, of course, comes in the longer range, where we're looking at a possible blow to our area with wind out on October 28th or 29th as well. And some of these models were showing 6, possibly 7 weather systems affecting us through the first week of November. All right, streams up to 13 likes. Thank you, everybody. Continue to get the word out there. Just trying to let people know of the weather that's coming soon. You know, there's quite a few skeptics out there, which is completely normal. Started cracking down on a lot of the skeptics, though. So some of my posts on Facebook have comments limited to followers only. It's because, you know, a lot of political and trolling comments going around, which I have zero tolerance for. Sun is starting to set in the area. These high clouds are starting to move onto the coast ahead of our next atmospheric river event, as seen here. This is the jet stream extension over the area. You see it clear as day on this map here. See, this jet stream extends all the way into Japan and the Koreas, across the northern Pacific, directly into our area. This is the moisture plume with that atmospheric river moving in. Then notice as I go forward in time here, it's going to start to move south and east, but rather progressively, so this will hopefully mitigate a lot of the flooding concerns for some of the area rivers. Then it pulls farther to the south, and then it spins up this low pressure system here in the upper levels, and that could bring us the wind threat on Saturday. But the atmospheric river moves well out of the area and spins up this upper level low here. It really just depends on how far south and east this jet stream sinks, because that'll heavily determine the placement of this upper level low. Right now, it brings it in the northern Vancouver Island, which would spare us a lot of strong to damaging winds. All right, I'm going to open up this time to any additional questions you guys may have. Feel free to ask away. Got all the time in the world. Still just watching that follower counter go up. And it also looks like Michael Snyder with Pacific Northwest Weather Watch is going live at 7 o'clock p.m. So I'm probably going to wrap up my stream around 7 o'clock and then go tune over into his stream to see what he has to say about it. And his is going to be more of a broader view because he covers the entirety of the Pacific Northwest. My main area of interest is just the immediate Puget Sound, which is why I came up with the name Puget Sound Storm Watch anyways. Excuse me. And that would also be a good time to wrap up anyways, because I almost for sure a majority of my audience would get absorbed into that one. You know, he's got around 102,000 subs compared to my 522. So we're at 18 frames on this new HER model. It goes out to 48. Still waiting for that to initialize. Let's go see what the 12Z NAM, the Continental NAM, has to say. It's lower resolution, but pretty similar story to what the other models are showing. So the 12 kilometer NAM pulls a 995 millibar low. This is Saturday afternoon, so rather shallow pressure gradient on it, just due to the, you know, the overall weakness of the low pressure center is nowhere near as deep as, say, a 985 or 975 millibar surface low. So not expecting huge wins with this setup. This is just another model I'll be watching in the near future too to see what it has to say. And then the 10-kilometer Canadian, the RDPS model, has a little bit more of a favorable storm track. See what it says for gusts. It would certainly bring a brief period of strong wind gusts 40 plus south of Seattle. And then maybe 30 plus up to 35 miles per hour for Seattle, and then a westerly surge along with it. But I think the chances of this one verifying are slim to none. Then this is the WRF NSSL, National Severe Storms Laboratory model. Just one of them that they use. This is one I don't use too commonly either, but it shows a pretty similar story for this area too. So, nothing of huge concern right now. But see, it shows a textbook cold front on radar, as well as the other models too. But it only goes out 48 hours to 5 a.m. And this one runs twice a day rather than 4 times a day. We do have some experimentals here as well, like the NSSL MPUS RN3. Brings a much more broad low pressure system in, which would not favor strong wind gusts for this area. Yeah, it's still looking pretty mild in the area of wind gusts. Things have really started to cool down after that weak front moved through. So a nice little break ahead of us for another 24 hours or so before the winds really start to pick up again. And I guess I'll bring this up now while we're in some downtime. If you guys are interested in helping me out and making it so that these live streams happen more often, please consider donating coffee to Puget Sound Stormwatch. So thank you to all of the supporters who have helped donate coffees here. The link to this is down in the description. And I will also post it in the comments as well. Do also have a promotion going on currently for the Stormwatch shop. 5 days left, 25% off orders over $70. Currently have 5 different designs with at least a dozen different apparel options at this time. Feel free to go give it a look, see what you think. Also posting religiously on Patreon as well. So a lot going on here on Patreon. Almost to 100 posts. But with the sun going down, visible satellite imagery becomes much harder to read. It does still show some of these pop-up showers over Vancouver Island and some of the open waters right now. But outside of that, just high clouds moving in. These high clouds just recently started to condense ahead of this area of precipitation coming on shore as well. So you notice how this area of high clouds grew in intensity as we go through the last hour. Started spreading out in coverage and condensing. Now it envelops much of the Seattle area and points north. But elsewhere, still looking partly cloudy with some sun breaks, especially south and west of Seattle. But as we go through the overnight hours, these higher clouds are going to move in, and we should wake up effectively with 100% cloud cover tomorrow morning. But this overall, this is our atmospheric river and associated cold front coming in. So we'll be watching this for breezy conditions around the area tomorrow, and then potentially a developing area of low pressure behind that, which should move in and give us some isolated, stronger wind gusts. 40 plus miles per hour possible for some of the Seattle area, depending on how things evolve over the next couple of days. Okay, does anyone have anything that they'd like to ask? We can open up some time for discussion. Yeah, so barring some cloud breaks here over the Central Sound tomorrow morning, it does look like we're going to be socked in with clouds. We're going to be socked in with clouds most of the day tomorrow ahead of this atmospheric river. So I hope you all enjoyed the sun while we had it today. Those of you who did get sun. It's probably the last time you're going to see the sun for most of a day for quite some time. This is infrared satellite, and it shows you most of the cloud tops are taller. But there's a good chance to have some low clouds mixed in there as well. But overall, looks like high to medium clouds are going to be high in density over the next few days. We're getting closer and closer to that 26K mark on Facebook. Only need 82 more people to follow on Facebook. And then we will hit our goal for the night. The last few runs on the European have been fairly consistent with the location of the low, but not consistent with the intensity. So I will 100% be checking the trends religiously as we get closer to the day of said event, which should be Saturday morning and the Saturday afternoon. It just depends on how strong this area of low pressure is and where it makes landfall. Because if what the current European is saying here is true, then it does have an extended window of seeing a 50-mile-per-hour gust for very isolated areas of the Puget Sound, mostly in the 40 to 45-mile-per-hour range with this setup. Strongest winds off the coast, of course. But these are 6-hour intervals, so these would be max wind gusts between these 6-hour intervals. You notice if it goes through 2 intervals and not just 1, that means up to 12 hours of these wind gusts a possibility. So between 5 p.m. on Saturday and 5 a.m. on Sunday, it still has some areas over 40 miles per hour across the central Puget Sound. It, of course, just depends, once again, how strong the slow pressure is going to be and where it moves is going to be huge for this forecast. So a setup like this would still bring a pretty decent wind gust to the Puget Sound. Because notice the tighter pressure gradient here on the south to southeastern portion of this low pressure, and how it does move over parts of the Puget Sound. So that's what's translating to that possibility of 40 plus mile per hour wind gusts for parts of our area. I pick a point here around the Milton area showing 44 mile per hour wind gusts between 5 p.m. and 11 p.m. And this would be the 6-hour max. So the highest wind gust that we could see within that 6-hour period, not sustained. All right, going to start wrapping things up here in a few minutes. It looks like most of the audience has already begun to disappear. Definitely seems like one of the slower streams that I've had, which is okay. It is a Wednesday afternoon, after all. You know, people are busy. It's dinner time. Kids are doing homework and so on. It's as expected. But, you know, Michael with Pacific Northwest Weather Watch has over 200 times as many subscribers as I have. So it's kind of a given that his is most likely going to boom. But I am going to be in attendance for his live stream to see what he has to say. But right now, this is just an initial forecast for what the European is saying. The 12Z had less for wind gusts for around our area, but the 18Z has certainly ticked up. So I'm interested to see what the 0Z, once it renders tonight, has to say for max wind gusts around this area, because it looks pretty enticing right now on the European, which overall does a pretty good job of estimating wind gusts around this area. I just wish the AI forecast system showed gusts, but it's not to that stage yet. Only sustained winds. It's really hard to estimate based on these models that are shown here what the wind gusts will be like on the European AI forecast system. So I really only use it to see what it has to say for the placement, timing, and track of the low pressure. And strength, of course. So just as a reminder for anyone new, mentioned this several times earlier, chance of thunderstorms west of the area Friday afternoon behind that cold front and atmospheric river. Seems to be more of a conditional threat, a really marginal window, short-lived for a few hours before the atmosphere stabilizes. So small chance, but non-existent for thunderstorms on Friday. Wind gusts are definitely on the lower end of what models were showing, at least for today's little transient frontal passage. These are max wind gusts since midnight. 84 miles per hour here at Camp Muir in Mount Rainier National Park, 66 at Chinook Pass, 52 at Crystal Mountain. Zoom in a little bit and not showing it anymore at SeaTac, but we did have 30 miles per hour earlier at SeaTac. And then at 38 miles per hour up here at Payne Field. So this was right on par with what models were showing for that area today. But elsewhere, definitely on the lower end, nowhere near what some of the models were showing before. So safe to say it was on the lower end of the bust spectrum, but still kind of a bust just for today. Rainfall amounts, definitely a bust. So right now, I'm really just waiting to see when this 0Z NAM drops. Now, the 0Z HERS almost done rendering. It currently goes out to 36 hours. So I can at least see what it says ahead of this frontal system coming in on Friday morning. Because right now it goes out to 5 a.m. Once this is done, it'll go out to 5 p.m. And it's still showing around 50 miles per hour off the coast of Whidbey Island, 50 miles per hour up here near Point Roberts. Much higher off the coast of Long Beach, higher around the Mount Rainier area, and locally higher downstream of the Nisqually River Valley. But otherwise, not too bad around the Puget Sound area in the morning time ahead of the front. It's going to be right around the frontal passage time when we'll be watching some of these wind gusts pick up a little bit. So that's just an overall summary of the stream. We're really just watching out for Friday, Saturday, all the way into Sunday to see what the models decide they want to narrow down on. Then the leading edge of cloud cover with the atmospheric river is just about to make landfall on the coast. Just seeing some showers over Vancouver Island at this time, but other than that, nothing more than some scattered clouds. So once again, thank you all so much, everyone who tuned in to the stream tonight. It was short notice for the YouTube audience, but I did let Facebook know ahead of time that I would be streaming tonight. And just as a heads up for anyone new, Michael with Pacific Northwest Weather Watch is going live at 7. I will be in attendance for that stream. So I'll be in the comment section. Then we'll be watching this overall area for the development of a mid-latitude cyclone being a possibility going into Saturday. There's going to be the atmospheric river and the cold front with the current system, and then a low pressure system right behind that within about 24 hours. So in rapid succession of one another. So multiple chances to get some strong winds in this area over the next 72 hours. Just as a heads up to everybody. All right, Sherry, hello. Sherry says thank you again. Yep, thank you for tuning in, Sherry. So those are really all my thoughts that I have on the weather coming up, this weekend. It's not looking as good as it did a few days ago, at least for max wind gusts. It's been on the downtrend, which is good news if you don't want power outages or wind damage. I just wish that the deterministics and ensembles had better model agreement. But it's like throwing a coin in the wishing well and praying that the models agree. It's just not always going to happen. All right, so special shout out to you 5 people who subbed during the stream. We're now at 522 subscribers on YouTube, and we're at 25,918 on Facebook, so we're only 82 away from hitting 26K already, which is another huge mile marker coming up for the Puget Sound Stormwatch brand. And I couldn't have done it without you guys watching tonight. But yeah, Mike's stream's going to start in about 20 minutes. So I'm going to hop on that when that happens, see what he has to say. And so if I see any of you guys in the comment section, feel free to say hello. But in the meantime, barring any additional questions, we're going to begin to wrap things up for the afternoon. All right, doesn't look like we have any questions or comments, so we're going to wrap things up for the afternoon. Yeah, much shorter stream than I anticipated, but you know what? Due to not really putting it out there, it's kind of expected, and the time of the week and time of the day it is. So I've got a lot of comments on Facebook about Saturday morning. Like a lot of comments. Because it seems like everybody has their plans for Saturday morning at around the same time, and unfortunately, it's going to be a breezy one by the looks of it. So I'm going to have to go break the news to all of them as well. So thanks everyone again. This is Anthony with Puget Sound Stormwatch. Another little YouTube live stream. I'm looking to do these a little more regularly, just to really start to boost the watch hour count. Now that we're over that 500 sub threshold, once I start getting up towards 3,000 watch hours, we can start to enable some more features here on YouTube to make the live streaming experience a little more pleasant. So it looks like we're only 80 people away now on Facebook from hitting 26K. So I'll be counting down cautiously. But yeah, guys, I'm going to sign off for the night. Thank you all again for tuning in. If you guys go tune into the stream tonight on Pacific Northwest